All right, Trey, welcome to the Lifestyle Investor Podcast. I'm so glad to have you on the show.
I am ecstatic. I'm happy to be here. As I'm sitting here thinking about it, I was like, wait, when did I meet Justin? And we met just going to town, jumping up hills and sweating our tails off about a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago.
That's right. You know, it's funny because we have a lot of people, a lot of mutual friends, a lot of people kind of rotating around in the same ecosystem. Because you're really good friends with my friend Tim Nikolive from Acton MBA, and then you sold your house to my dear friend John Vroman. So like I had heard like all these rumblings, and then it was really funny when I connected the dots. It's like, oh, this person I've been hearing about from two of my closest friends is you, and I've been working out with you. And by the way, for those of you that don't know any of Trey's story, you're going to learn it's incredible, but it's very intimidating to be working out in the same group, and I'm talking small group, 2 or 3 people, with an Olympic decathlete. So I just have to, go out there and say that. But I also feel really good that I could hang as well. So
Yeah, I hope, I was as underwhelming as it could have possibly been those days,
Man, well, I'll tell you what, it seems like you haven't lost a step whatsoever you'll probably say that you have, but from an outsider's view, I am just impressed with the shape that you're in today. You're not competing like you were in, a couple of different Olympic games. And you are just ripped. You push yourself. You do such great physical activity. It's very inspiring and very impressive.
Thank you, first of all, but I wish I could say that it was just this nice carryover, like you retire from athletics or any sporty career and you just maintain that love for physical activity and fitness. And it really wasn't the case. And I think when you and I worked out together that day, that might have been my second or third time I really, with intent, went into exercise in 3.5 years. Like it had been a very long time. But since then, it reignited. I wasn't training for performance anymore. I was training for the rest of my life and training to be able to play with my kids and swim and throw them into the pool and run and chase with them. And now it's this. That's my goal, is to be able to still beat my son at basketball when he's, a sophomore and junior in high school. So that's what we're training for now.
Oh, I love it. And what great memories to empower you and to motivate you and to strive for. It's so cool. I've got to tell you, you pretty much destroyed me with that frog jump that I think is just like a natural thing that you guys do in track and field and, but man, and by the way, you run your own little workout group that so many people rave about, where you do these, wind sprints and all these different high intensity like circuits and series. It's really fun to see.
Yeah, with a guy who had been coming really consistently, and it had been like this really small group of men who were coming consistently. He's like, "Hey Trey, you should think about like rebranding this," because it really, I was just calling it like the sprint workout. We were going and doing sprint drills and learning like the skill of running fast. And then we would go run fast and the workouts were really hard. And he's like, maybe you should just call it like a sprint workshop and then like an optional, workout afterwards or something. And I was like, why? And he's like, I think people are a little intimidated. I'm like, oh, okay. So rebranded it. And now, the group is pretty big now. And it's just a lot of fun. It's like just clockwork at, 6:30 in the morning, every Tuesday morning at the little public track down there at Austin High School in downtown Austin. Yep.
Well, we've got a lot of people in the Austin area that listen, so maybe we'll have some people that are not intimidated that show up and, get some lessons from you, because you're a great teacher. You do a very good job of like helping everyone see that they can do it. And even people that aren't in the most incredible shape are showing up and they're doing it and they're getting a great workout, because the goal isn't to be this extreme athlete that's showing up. It's just to get better than where you were yesterday. Right.
That 100% that's the nail on the head. Everyone has different starting points, but everyone is just out there doing that, just kind of that plus one each day, getting a little bit better and learning the skill. And there is no perfect, unless you're like Usain Bolt, like we can all do better. Right. And that's kind of the mentality I have with most things, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your career is incredible, and I'm excited to kind of get into it. I'm curious though, when you were young, did you want to be an Olympic athlete? Did you like have these dreams or visions where you were competing in the Olympics, or did that come along the way when you started realizing that you're actually good and you are excelling more than the rest of the world or the rest of your peers?
Yeah, it was a late revelation. Honestly, when I was young, I wanted to play in the NFL or Major League Baseball or the NBA. Like that was my dream, was to be Larry Bird. I was like, that guy can do it. I can do it. Let's go. And then as life happens and you see, you know, in retrospect, the path you were on and the people in your lives and how things fell. I mean, track and field really just chose me, and like my life as a decathlete chose me. It wasn't this thing where I just saw it and was like, that's what I want to do. You know, like I grew up during, you know, Dan and Dave, you remember 1992?
Oh yeah.
Reebok threw tens of millions of dollars at those guys to be the best in the world, the best athletes in like a marquee event and sell shoes. And it kind of blew up in their faces, which made it one of the most infamous and arguably a better campaign for them than had they both done really well. But that was, I didn't have that moment. Like I didn't have that, you know, watching Michael Johnson run in 96, or I didn't have those moments. It wasn't until I found myself deep into my college career and I had stepped into the Olympic trials, and I'd only done 4 decathlons. Like the Olympic trials was like my 5th ever one. And I looked around, and to my left was the world champion. To my right was the eventual Olympic champion. And I ran with them. I was just as fast, if not, I mean, I was faster than they were. And I was like, oh, these guys are mortal. You know, I'm a long way from where they are, but I think I could do this. Like, I really think I could do this. And the light switch went off. You know, I reprioritized everything. I started to more, you know, professionalize what I was doing and started making the sacrifices that it was going to take. And it was on a mission. You know, I'm going to make the next Olympic team. So that was in 2004. And then, yeah, what feels like an eternity when you're in the middle of it, but really 4 short years later, I made the team and was off to Beijing.
That's incredible that in that short of a period of time, you could say, all right, I'm all in. I'm going to become an Olympian. And you did it. And, you know, to just not have thought ahead of time, to not have been training, because a lot of people, they train their whole life for this, right? They are groomed as a child to compete at the highest of levels. So your story it amazes me, because you're kind of like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe I should see how good I could be. And then boom, you are one of the best in the world.
And I have that perspective too. Like I was blessed, you know, and that was kind of the thing that not kept me going, but that was a big tenet of my I want to call it work ethic, or my ability to get out of bed every day, was really that, man, I've been given these gifts. God has blessed me with these talents, and I want to be a good steward of those talents. I just want to make sure that I do my best to reach whatever this body in my mind and soul's potential is. I want to see where that leads me. And at all times during my career, I was firm in that belief that I was put on the earth to be a decathlete and to do what I was doing for this time in my life.
Now, for those people, and by the way, I love that. I think that's incredible, because you've got to draw your passion from somewhere, and what a great place to draw it from. For those that don't know what a decathlon is, can you explain that? And then additionally, I'd love to hear what you naturally excelled at and what you really had to like double down to get to Olympic levels at.
Yeah. So zooming out historically. So in 1912, Jim Thorpe, what many consider the greatest athlete to have ever lived. He won everything at the 1912 Olympics. King Gustav or King Ferdinand, one of the kings, like of where was it? Maybe Stockholm or Sweden or somewhere, was giving him his medal. And he had won the long jump, the broad jump, the modern pentathlon. And he said, "You, sir, are the world's greatest athlete." And he handed him his medal. And from then on, the winner of the Olympic decathlon was given that moniker. And so this shaped and molded the type of person I think that was attracted to this well-roundedness, this robust application of like skill and speed and power and endurance. And and fortitude. And so in the events, they kind of represent all of those attributes. So it's a 2-day event. You do 5 events on day 1, 5 events on day 2. And it's the 100, the long jump, shot put, high jump, and the 400-meter dash on day 1. Then you turn around the next day and you run the 110 hurdles, you throw the discus, pole vault, throw the javelin, and then run the 1500 to close it off. And so in high school, I was just a pole vaulter. That's what I was recruited for. And so that was kind of my ace in the hole. I always pole vaulted well. Some meets are better than others, but that was always an event I had in my back pocket that I never fretted about. I wasn't ever worried about. I scored a lot of points in. I was never outside of the top 1 or 2 guys that were jumping. And it just, I think for a lot of decathletes causes a lot of grief. For me, that wasn't the case. And then as I grew, I signed my scholarship papers. I was booked scholarship, to Mississippi State. I started messing around with other events, and it turned out I was really fast. So I ran 10:83 in the 100 in high school as a senior. I was like, 6'3", 155 pounds, but could run. Looked like a little skinny distance runner, and then started to add muscle and speed and power and stuff. And ended up running 10:26 in the 100 and started to develop the other throws and started to develop, the ability to jump far just because I was so fast. It's an old man's game. Like the decathlon's not just get out of bed. Oh, you're a good decathlete. It takes a long time. I think I equate it to this, say you have like 2 clients or 2 customers and the sales cycle is 4 years long. And if you want to get both customers, it might take you 12 years. You might miss a couple of sales along the way, and to get them both, to land them both in the same time frame might take you 12 years. And so that was early on. I had some coaches that saw potential and said, listen, we're not going to just, I wasn't a good thrower. So we're not going to just throw every day to try to get you good at the throws. We're going to train like you're going to be doing this for 10 years. And it was a very long-term approach. We slow cooked, every single thing. So by the time I got to that 2008 Olympic trials, I was incredibly well-rounded. I eventually had good events all around and didn't have many weaknesses, but no one likes the 1500. It's awful. Like it's the last event. I weighed 210 pounds. I was 6'5". That's a lot of weight to carry around the track. I was just, I didn't ever fell in love with that event. I started to enjoy the training for it. I really found myself there later in my career, but man, I was never the fastest. I didn't just have it. And I trained my butt off for it. 1 year, made a really concerted effort. Like I'm going to run 4:30. I wanted to run 4 minutes and 30 seconds for 1500, which is like a 4:46, 4:47 mile. And wow. I was in the best shape of my life and ran 4:41, like wow. Best shape I've ever been in. Right. And then there was another season, the London Olympics. I already had a medal in tow. I went out really, really slow. I knew I was going to win silver, and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the heck out of that run. And I closed normally. It just felt good and easy. And I ran 4:40. And wow. So it really, and I wasn't really super fit. Like it just didn't matter, So it just was this thing for those years after. Like it didn't matter if I trained for it or didn't train specifically for it. I was going to run 4:41 plus or minus a second or two. It hurts incredible. Just the same. And it hurts the same. It's just the worst.
I can't believe that you were able to compete in so many. I mean, to be back-to-back days, that many events, to run the 1500 that fast, it's just incredible to me. And by the way, I'm glad you bulked up, because your senior year, 6'3", 155 pounds, that's like you're a cross country runner. You're not track and field. You're not a decathlete. Like you got to have the muscle to be able to do that. So hearing kind of you finish out at 6'5" and 210, that makes a whole lot more sense. Now, I am really curious though, how on earth did you come into pole vaulting? You said you're really good at it. How does one just decide that they want to be a pole vaulter?
Yeah, my freshman year was just walking through the track. I think we were doing basketball off season, and I just saw somebody across the field pole vaulting. And I'm like, what is that? And like, oh, that's the pole vault. It's like, well, who's that guy? oh, that's what's his name? Like Brian Tomlinson, I think was his name. And I'm like, oh, is that good? Is he doing well? Like, I didn't know what good was. And he's like, is that good? He's like, yeah, that kid, he just won the state championship. I'm like, oh, I could do that. That's cool. I'm going to go try that. So I pole vaulted for 2 weeks my freshman year, just learned it, and you don't just like start at the back of the runway, holding at the top of a pole, bending it and stuff. You're clear. I mean, I cleared like 8 feet, just nothing significant. And then came back the next off season and I pole vaulted for 2 months, got a little bit better. I jumped like 13.6 that year, which again, that'd be really good if I were a female high school vaulter now. Like it wasn't that great. And then came back the next season, and in the middle of the fall, right as basketball season was about to start, we weren't having tryouts. We weren't doing anything like that. We were preparing for our first tournament. The coach approached me and just said, "Hey Trey, we don't need you this year." I was like, I'm like, okay, I'll play. You want me to play JV? That's fine. I mean, I was a junior, would have been kind of embarrassing. Sure, I'll play down. That's okay. He's like, no. We don't need you at all. Just go be a pole vaulter or something. And like, I was a good basketball player. Was I the star? Not at all. I was a starter. I could play. I was 4 years away from being the best athlete in the world, but like, I'm not. Anyway, like heartache, cry myself to sleep, like in my, that as bad as it could get, like in your mom's arms, don't understand why the world is so terrible. It was not great, like I was being removed from all my friends. It was embarrassing, and I didn't want to go to school the next day. Parents made me go. My friends' parents boycotted the first few games of the season because there was no good reason. Right. So my immature, like 17-year-old self was going to stick it to this guy and be the best pole vaulter, anybody had ever seen. Like, okay, he wants me to be a pole vaulter. I'll show him. So ended up I got second in state, in the state meet that year, came around for my senior season and set the indoor state pole vault record. And that at that track meet got me noticed by a couple of schools and got, a full scholarship offers to like smaller schools, but got like noticed by some SEC track programs. And so that was like, all right, here we go. This is my ticket to college, get a little academic money, little book scholarship here. We got a full ride. Let's go.
That is such a cool story. And it's also just great to take the long view, because the short view is like, how could this happen to me? You're ruining my life. I don't get to play basketball, my favorite sport, but not even recognizing that that's going to concentrate you in the thing that you're going to become the best in the world at, and that's just, it's so neat to see. It's the whole idea of Garth Brooks's song, right? Of unanswered prayers. Mm-hmm. And it's cool to see how it plays out, where there is a bigger picture than just that. And I'm curious, did the coach actually recognize that? Did the coach want you to concentrate there, or did the coach just feel like, culturally it wasn't the right fit? Did you ever find that out?
I wish I could tell you. And yeah, we had the opportunity to figure it out. And I really don't want to know. Don't really care at this point. Like now it just makes the story that much better. Yeah. He and I both were inducted into our town's, sports hall of fame. And we were in the inaugural class. I think it was 2011, maybe. So not that, 7.5, 8 years later after this incident, we're both inducted into the sports hall of fame. And like, he said, he like made a joke, that I should thank him in my speech for cutting him from the team. And so I like had a retort during my speech that like, I can't, congrats on getting in here despite cutting the best athlete in the world off of your team. How many games did you win that year, coach? Like that, it was, so it's not like contentious, but there's no love lost either.
Yeah. That's interesting. But yeah, what a cool, I actually just like that you said, hey, I don't need to know. This is just the way that the cards were dealt, and I'm going to roll with it. Yeah. So you glossed
and I wasn't going to make the NBA. I wasn't going to I might've played like NAIA basketball at my best. I'm happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, I'm sure. And by the way, I really want to know, you glossed over this getting a silver medal, and this needs more justice to it. But I think there's an even cooler story that leads up to it, of kind of what happened and what it was like going to the Olympics and even battling some injuries and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it would make for like a nice 4-hour podcast, but the short, the short version of it. And for those of you who are tuning in, you can see this nice, beautiful zipper, that I have on my elbow. At the 2011 World Championships, I was trying to defend my world champion, my world title. In the javelin, I was throwing as good as I've ever thrown, throwing as hard as I've ever thrown. And it was down to my third attempt, and I'm at the back of the runway and everything feels completely normal. I come down with a bunch of speed. I put my leg down, bam, javelin's flying out super fast, but my elbow legitimately explodes. And, everybody's pretty familiar with like Tommy John surgery in pitchers. Well, like this was like twice that. They couldn't find my UCL. It exploded off of both the attachments, both off my ulna and radius, ulna and humerus, sorry. And it was like, hey, this is not good. I came back home. I won the world championship, by the way. Still, I ran with this like super casted up arm, like a robot, and held on and won the title again. And then I was stuck. I was at home. I was driving back from San Antonio, and I got the call from the X-ray tech, or from the diagnostic guy that was down at the San Antonio Spurs office where I got it done. And he's like, hey man, it's not good. Like, it's gone. We can't even really see it on these images, but then you got to get this taken care of. There is no rehab out of this. Good luck, like out the door, like, see ya. So I called my mom. My mom happened to work at St. Vincent's Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama, as the controller for that healthcare system in that hospital. And she just happened to be 6 floors above Champion Sports Medicine Clinic, which is where Dr. James Andrews, the father of orthopedic surgery, the guy that put like Drew Brees' arm back together before he was moved on to the Saints. She walked down, talked to his assistant. He called her within like an hour and just said, I know exactly who Trey is. We got to get him taken care of. When can he be in? I have a space on Thursday. This is on Monday. Whoa. So I fly home Tuesday afternoon. I'm in surgery at 6 a.m. on Thursday, and I'm waking up out of surgery in this like whirlwind, and like it's half anesthesia, half like the gravity of what's just happened hit me, and I can't move my fingers. They had to displace my ulnar nerve, like your funny bone. When you hit your funny bone, that's what you're really hitting. So now mine's no longer in my elbow; it's up near my bicep. So all that nerve reset. I couldn't move my fingers. I just started crying again. I just start bawling, and my mom is a strong woman of faith, and she's the one that kind of got me through the basketball stuff of like, look, there's a reason this is all happening. We don't know it yet, but all we can do is our best, and you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. This is okay. And I only had 8 months until the Olympic trials, and 8.5 to the Olympic trials and 10 months to the Olympics. Like no one, like a pitcher has never even come back and is not their full self for 2 years. No one has ever done this. And that's kind of all I had in my head. And so I had a moment, rehab is awful, but during that first kind of week of rehabilitation, I said, I can look back on this time, and I can be one of two things. I can be regretful and look back and know that I might have missed some steps or tried to rush it and try to get back too soon and do really serious permanent damage. Or I can look back and just have no regrets. I can use every waking moment in the pursuit of this goal and this dream of being an Olympic champion and being the best version of myself, and exploring my physical potential, and knowing I'd done everything within my power to get back, to give myself a chance. And that set the tone. So I was the number 1 athlete in the world. I was not really unbeatable. Everybody's beatable. Man, I was it. That London was going to be my games, So now I'm sitting on my couch and I can't even touch my fingers together. What am I, like, just this feeling of like, what am I going to do? But resigning in the fact that I don't know, but I can do my best. And so from that day forward and several 100,000 repetitions later of just silly, stupid, unsexy, but disciplined and committed movement, I got myself in a position where, you know, I threw the javelin one time and I threw it at the Olympic trials 8.5 months later, and it went like 70 feet short or 80 feet short of what I had thrown just months before, but pre-surgery, but it was just enough for me to make the team. So
Wow.
now I'm in London. I've got house money. Now it's, wow, okay, I've got 6 more weeks to let this elbow cook, to do everything in my power to be ready, for the elbow to be even more ready. Here we go. And then I find myself having just a really solid meet, and I'm in silver medal position, but the guy in third can throw the piss out of the javelin. And if I throw what I threw at the Olympic trials, I finish 4th or 5th. I don't win a medal. And so I'm at the back of the runway and I'm talking to my coach, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to let loose. And he's like, you sure? And I was like, what more could I have done? What more could I have done to be ready for this moment? And I still feel it right now. And I almost even feel like crying. Like, I went back there with more confidence than I've ever had in anything in my life, that everything was going to be okay. And I threw within 4.5 feet of my all-time best. I threw nearly as far as I did in the track meet that I busted my elbow in the first place. 10.5 months later.
Wow.
And you can Google it. It's on YouTube somewhere. And there's a video of my entire celebration sequence. You would have thought I had won like $100 million, or like you would have thought I had won this like mega jackpot lottery. I celebrate for at least 4 minutes, just running around. I jump in the stands. I'm hugging my coaches, my agent, my friends that were there supporting me. My parents, unfortunately, were sitting way too far up in the stadium, but I'd go berserk. And everyone's kind of like, does Trey know he didn't? Trey knows that there's one more race left, right? That he didn't win this, right? And it just didn't matter. It was just this, I'd never felt anything like that. And that insanely gratifying victory. And then it's fun getting to tell the story, because on paper, everyone's like, man, so you won the world championship, then you won another world championship, but then you only got silver. No, that stinks. I'm like, the hell it does. It's like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. So that's the Cliff Notes version. Yeah.
That is just such an incredible story. I can't believe you continued competing in the world championships with a totally blown, elbow. You finish running, you're literally wrapped up as you're running with an unintact elbow. You win that. And then most people, and by the way, you're favored to win it all. And then you had this injury, and most people probably counted you out. Like, you weren't even going to make the team, right? And the mere fact that you made the team, you competed, you got silver, that's just incredible. And what a difference that time than the previous Olympics, right?
Yeah,
so,
the previous Olympics was just this, it was too big. It was such a big thing for me. I was in medal position going into the pole vault, best event for me, should have moved myself up. I was throwing jab really well, and I was probably the fittest I'd ever been. I was going to run 4:30 if it took that. And it was just too big of a moment, and I crumbled. I literally, physically, emotionally crumbled and did not clear a bar in the pole vault. So I went from 3rd place and was going to be fighting for silver there to dead last place and dropped out, and just, woke up under the stadium crying again. Was just like, what is happening? How did this happen? It was just too big of a moment for me.
I think that story, though, is so important to the overall, picture of what happened, because without that moment, without that experience, I don't think you would have been prepared to weather this storm of adversity and injury the way that you did. And so, as painful as it is, it's just like getting cut. It helped define who you were and kind of moved you closer to getting that silver medal. And most people, to have the opportunity to even compete to get into the Olympics is such a great honor, but to actually medal, the percentage of people, it's such a small percentage. You think about like professional athletes, that's a very small percentage. It's a smaller percentage to medal in the Olympics, to go to the Olympics, let alone medal in the Olympics. And so when you just think of what you've accomplished, that to me is mind-boggling. Like the odds for which this can happen and that you were one of them?
Yeah, it's something like when you're in the moment, you're surrounded by those people. So it's this, yeah, of course we're all Olympians. And then like, yeah, of course, yeah, you've got 3 medals, I've got 2, you've got a medal. Yeah, it's just what we do. But like the older I get, the further away I get from that, the more what you say rings very, very true of how fortunate I was to be in those positions and honestly, just be proud of my younger self, be proud of those decisions that kind of guides me today. Like okay, when I'm 50, what am I going to be proud of? Like the 40-year-old Trey, what am I going to say? Like, man, I'm glad that younger version of myself was smart enough to see, X,
Well, and you always have the story to relate to anyone who has the shortcoming that we're all going to have at some point, especially when you get to coach your kids through it, where it's like, hey, I was on the biggest stage in the world and look what happened to me. And I had 2 choices I could make. And instead of giving up, I made the other choice. And it was probably one of the toughest choices that I ever made. I just think that that's so cool. So you're this 2-time world champion. You're this 2-time Olympic athlete. You won a silver medal, but I think it gets even cooler because you just went back to the Olympics this last year as a commentator. Talk about that a little bit. That had to be just amazing.
Yeah. And again, born out of unfortunate circumstance as well. So in 2016, I'm preparing for my 3rd Olympic Games. Again, I'm feeling good. I'm healthy. I'm not quite I'm at the tail end of my prime, but stuff's going really well. Best fall training I'd ever had. And it's mid-January. I'm getting ready for a pole vault meet, and I dislocate my foot. My takeoff foot completely comes out. I'm like staring at my heel, like the bottom of my shoes looking right at me. And I'm freaking out, for lack of a better term, and spend the next 5 months just trying to walk without pain, trying to figure out, okay, how can I stay somewhat fit? How do I figure this out? How do I just get back to the Olympic trials? If I can get there, maybe I can sneak in, make a team or whatever. And really nothing held up. I couldn't get through the first day. Strained the hamstring that was on that side because it was just underprepared. Who knows if I would have made the team? Odds are probably would have been close, but it just wasn't in the cards, and it was just too little too late. So I'd done everything in my power and accepted the outcome of the track meet and wasn't going to make the Olympic team. And so I land in Austin, Texas. I'm sitting next to my wife, phone rings, I got a voicemail, it pings when I turn the phone on. And it's a producer from NBC, and he's like, hey, if you want to come down to the track today, we'd love to have you on air and talk a little bit. I'm like, man, sorry. Write him back. I'm in Austin. Sorry. Maybe next time. I appreciate it though. He's like, no, we'll fly you back out. We'd really love to see how you are on camera. And I look at my wife, we're still in our seats. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. She's like, you're doing it. I'm like, okay.
What a good wife.
Yeah. So that's late afternoon in Austin, Texas. The next day at noon on West Coast time, I'm back in Eugene, and I'm on the track with a microphone in my hand, talking about men's triple jump and women's pole vault. And it's first time I've ever, I'm live. It's like, you're live on NBC. And it's the first time I've ever been on camera. First time I'm holding the microphone, and I had a blast. It was invigorating. It was fun being out there talking about my friends, talking about the sport that I care about. And I do 2 days of track and field, and I'm walking out of the production area back to the airport. Executive producer bumps his head out of the truck. He's like, hey, Trey, do you want to go to Rio? I'm like, yeah, I do. And so I get to join an old teammate of mine, Sonia Richards-Ross, and we fly to Rio, and we do our very first big track meet is the Olympics, and huge learning experience. Still don't know how anyone put any faith in me to do that, but it's become this part of my year every year. I get to call track and field. I get to display the joy and try to explain these events to people so they can understand them and get to know the athletes that are the best in the world at what they do. And it's just been amazing. I was one of the luckiest, 1,000 people that got to watch in person the Tokyo Olympics. I got to be in the stadium watching world record after world record, medal after medal, story after story of this human experience and human performance at its highest level, all because I got hurt in 2016. So again, same arch, same thread being woven in my life of that I should probably rejoice a little bit more when bad things happen, because it seems like the better things come out of those things.
Well, I love that you do turn it, because it could be easy to be like, oh man, I'm so living in regret for this third Olympics that I should have been in. I know a lot of people that would have lived that way, but you see it differently. You see it as the gift that it gave you, not the curse that it was. And I think that that's really important. I also think it's important when you have like strong faith to back you, and just kind of keep you sane and let you know there are bigger things than just this. Like this isn't as big as we make it out to be. There are greater obstacles. There are greater needs and uses of our gifts. And so you're doing that. You're displaying that. So how cool is that? You would watch all these Olympic games anyway. Now you're getting paid to be there in person, interact with these athletes, hang out with your, co-anchors and co-commentators. It's just awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And I'd want to reiterate, like, when in those moments, you don't have your wits about you like this. This is hindsight. I get to say, wow, what a blessing this was. But man, as an athlete and a competitor, it is infuriating. It's really bittersweet, where I recall moments when I was calling the Olympic decathlon final, they're running the 1500, and my producer steps in and talks in my ear and says, hey, Trey, you need to pick it up a little bit. I know you're sad, but you got to be excited. Because I was visibly, and you could hear it in my voice, how sad I was that I wasn't out there. And so in those moments, like, I afforded myself the grace to be upset. But only as time passes, you realize, man, that was a big benefit to me and my family that happened. Because I mean, my daughter was born a couple of months after that. And it really made it easier for myself to step away, because I was still going to get to be in touch with the sport. I was still going to be involved.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I had Chris Pronger, who's also an Olympic athlete, NHL great legend, on the show. And he's moving here to Austin, and is part of one of my investment groups. So I'll have to make sure that you guys connect. I think you'd enjoy one another's company as just the best of the best at what you do. So cool. And I love even beyond this. So like we could look at Trey Hardee, this amazing Olympian, but we can also look at you as, hey, you've opened up a new chapter in your life. You are an investor. You're an entrepreneur. I'd love to hear about some of those things. I know that you kind of got your start in this space through reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I know that you have parents that were both CPAs and corporate controllers. And so, maybe that exact path doesn't run, in your family, but recognizing the importance of these numbers and, just the importance of details probably does.
Yeah. The one thing it definitely taught me is that I don't want to be an accountant. That was it. Like those dinner conversations were just like, is this really what y'all want to talk about right now? Really? Who cares how much the MRI is? Who cares? So then, and healthcare in and of itself was a real snooze fest anyways, but it was that, I mean, going back to like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it was that my parents clocked in and clocked out, were salaried employees. They squirreled away all the money they could. They made in, they had vested, they had 401ks, they had everything that was there. And it was more about the saving part of it that I learned from them, and really the delayed gratification of what investing should feel like. This isn't a casino. This is planting seeds. And that's really what I got out of it. But I learned as I got older, and I learned as I started to make money, was the difference between an asset, or a cash flowing asset versus just like bonds and equities and things that are just for later, like things that you can put in a SEP and I don't even want to see it. Don't even tell me about it. I'm just going to give you money and you put it in the SEP and I trust my advisor kind of thing, versus like something like real estate. So every red cent that I made in track and field, I bought Austin real estate. I bought my home. I bought rental properties. I bought stuff that I knew when I retired, or when my abilities were gone and no one was going to pay me to run track anymore, I didn't have to run out and get a job. I didn't have to run out and start trying to figure it out while also needing money to support my family. And so that was my, my big aha moment is I won a medal in 2009, and I used that capital as a down payment, like the cash bonus you get from, a sponsor, as a down payment for my first house, and lived there only like 2.5, 3 years before I built my next house with my future wife. And we kept the old one, and that was the rental property. That turned me on to I was like, oh my, wait, okay, you mean the renter's paying my note, I can write off the interest, and in like 10 years, we're going to be this far down the schedule of the mortgage, and there's interest or inflation-induced debt destruction and all of these byproducts of, and when I buy, mulch for this house and there's some left over, I can use that mulch at my house and still write it off in this LLC. All of the benefits of this stuff was just, it blew my mind. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to buy anything else for myself. I'm going to buy more single family rentals in Austin, Texas. And I mean, anybody that was buying single family houses in Austin, Texas in the last 30 years looks like a flipping genius. And so, yeah, that afforded me the ability to go to business school. I went back, paid tuition to business school, didn't have to, worry about where money was coming in from. And it just, those lessons from my parents of just sowing seeds and just working at stuff so that when the time came and I needed it, I had it. And that's where I'm coming from,
That's incredible. And by the way, you would have done well in any market with that strategy, but it's a good thing you picked Austin, Texas, because you have had some exponential return on those homes since you started investing. I mean, this is a boom economy. And I know you just built a gorgeous new home here this past year, which is exciting. And so it's cool seeing what you've been able to build, and instead of frivolously spending, that you're intentionally buying assets that produce income. That is music to my ears. It's what I love teaching people. So well done.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder though. Now that we're set up and we're okay, it's getting really, really hard to keep that discipline. I'll say that. There was one, like when the Tesla Model X came out, we had it, like we had it for like the 3-day long weekend test drive. And it was like, okay, this is the one, we're going to go back and buy this. And I was at the dealership or at the showroom, and we're talking, and I'm like, nah, yeah, we could finance this, or we could, we should put money down. I don't know. I'll be right back. And I went and I got a Starbucks coffee at the Domain, and I called my wife and I'm like, hey, we're not going to get this car. She's like, what? Why? It's literally my dream car. Now the Cybertruck's the dream car, but like, it's literally the dream car that we wanted. And I was like, no, there's a duplex on Knuckles Crossing that I think we could get for this. And she's like, okay. And there was no argument. She just goes, okay. Because she saw what we were doing and what we were building. And that thing, instead of, that thing could have paid for 2 Model X's in the cash flow that it gets. We liquidated it just last year to build this beautiful home. But like, it was those kind of little tiny decisions that are just delay the gratification now so that everything's okay down the line,
I love it. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you've been able to do that. And yes, you're right. The more comfortable you get, the less inclined you are to keep doing that. And so I think all of us need to constantly remind ourselves that when things get a little comfortable, to still keep the discipline going. We can enjoy life, and we should enjoy life today, but not completely at the expense of tomorrow. It should be both. We should focus on both. Yeah. And you model that really well. So thank you for sharing that. I love seeing athletes that instead of going from, just stratospheric numbers in income to, bankrupt or in debt. I love seeing athletes. And I know that, Olympic athletes, I mean, you get a nice bump from endorsements and sponsorships, but financially it's a lot different than being in professional sports where you're competing, every day or every week over, a long season. But for you to be able to take what you've earned and turn that around so that you don't have to work, so that you can be, what I call a lifestyle investor. I think it's incredible. But then you can focus your time and energy on the things that are most exciting to you. And I'd love for you to talk about your new wellness practice that you just started.
Yeah, so that was kind of it. So going through this process and retiring, it was, I'm going to attach myself at the hip to the what seemed like the most successful people that I knew. And every single one of them to the T said, I wish I could go back and spend more time with my kids. And so my definition of wealth is just that. We spend less than I make, and my time is my own. And I spend my time with my kids. And so I don't step into any endeavors that are going to take me away from that too much. Now, there's temporary sacrifices in order to set that up down the road. But for right now, that's it. I've started and wound up several businesses. All of them made money, but none of them were for me. And now I finally feel like I'm aligned with my past and history and the lessons that I learned in the decathlon. And that made me the best and most successful decathlete that I could be, the #1 athlete in the world for 4 years out of my career. How do I offer that? Where's the intersection between that and the general public and people that want that type of outcome in their life, whether it's, increasing life expectancy, increasing healthy life expectancy, having a better relationship with their family or their work or their job, or improving just physical fitness, wellness. I'm trying to figure out how to craft that. I don't want to call it a product, but I was out raising money for a completely other venture. And I had a series of dinners, and everyone has the dinner at the end. Like, what I'm looking for is this, and like, I really appreciate it. I really respect all you guys. It would be awesome if you could be on board. Everyone was like, yeah, that's a good idea. We really see that. That's a good idea. There's cash flow there. We think that opportunity is for you down the road, but can we just pay you to tell us what to do? And I'm like, what? We think you've got something here. Whatever you're saying, we'll do it. Like, in terms of the conversation's always led, how did you train for the decathlon? How do you do that? Like, all the things that made me a successful decathlete are things that could be applied in everybody's life. And so right now, we launched on January 3rd, and I've got a small beta group of 10 people that by midsummer, we're going to have this nice marketable product and kind of the playbook for everybody's desired outcomes. We have oncology, we have surgical oncologists, we have lawyers, we have independent contractors. We've got just people that get it and want to spend the money to take care of themselves. And to boil it all down, want to be on this journey with Trey Hardee. And I've got an awesome team of registered dietitians, high performance coaches. The guy that runs our strength and conditioning programming stuff, he was at the Tampa Bay Bucks. He was at the Washington Huskies. He was at the Texas Longhorns. He's like, I'm trying to think the athletes under his tutelage. I think he's got 8 Olympic medals. He's got 3 NBA draft lottery picks. Like, they know what they're doing, and they're on board for all of this stuff. And we're evidence-based, science-driven, and just excited to build a really, really tight-knit community of encouragement. And yeah, I could go on and on about this for a really, really long time, but I'm just finally in that zone of alignment where what I used to do, I get to fold that in again, just like being a commentator. I get to fold in that thing that made me, just that little 0.5% better, that consistent, unsexy discipline of doing the little tiny reps, just touching my fingers together, just doing all the stuff that no one else was willing to do, and getting to help people enjoy the fruits of that labor, getting to help people and educate people and encourage people to do the exact same thing in their own lives. And that is Altum Wellness.
Trey, that is just amazing. Your story is incredible. I'm so excited for this wellness practice. Where can my audience learn more about you and this brand?
Well, right now we're still cooking the brand. We're going to unveil something in midsummer, so we're keeping it kind of close to the vest, but Altum Wellness will be there, and it'll be on Instagram, and altumwellness.me is the website. Right now it's just a splash page, and it just has our client login, so they can pay for the service. But I'm at Trey Hardee on every social media platform. And if you want to just shoot me a note and ask questions and talk to me a little bit about Altum, it's Trey at altumwellness.me. And I'm always available to talk. I'm always available to share advice. Love meeting new people, and yeah, that's where I'm at today.
Well, Trey, thanks so much for taking the time to share your story with us and so many words of wisdom. I want to end today the way I end every show, and that's this. I really want to encourage all of you watching, all of you listening. What's the one step you can take today to move towards financial freedom, to living a life that you truly desire on your terms, not a life by default, but a life by design? Catch you next week.